Welcome back to another edition of Gary's Record Collection. Today we're going into the vaults of A&M Records in the 1960s. A&M was the home of Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. Herb Alpert actually founded the label with his partner Jerry Moss. So many hit records came out of that studio. And after the success of Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, Herb decided that, there's room for more. So he had his friend Julius Wechter, who was playing marimba on Herb's songs, said, you know what? You should form your own group. And that's just what he did. He formed a group called the Baja Marimba Band, much in the same style of Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, more focused on marimba, but they had their own string of hits in the 60s and were very popular on TV. So in this episode, we are going to look at the album called Heads Up by the Baja Marimba Band. And of course, I do have my well-worn copy here. I had this, my mom had this actually. She got it when it came out in the 1960s. And of course, we point out, because of these albums, this is the, let's see if we can get it right there, A&M LP 123. That means it's the mono version of the album. And of course, being the collector that I am, I have the, right there it is, the stereo version of the album, and that has a catalog number of SP4123. Yep, so we'll put that aside. This is, I would say this is their best album of the entire group. They had some good hits, starting in the early 60s, 62, 63, but I come back to this record all the time. All the songs on it are great. Let's listen to just a few. The first one leads off with, was a hit for the Seekers based on a film that came out, a very popular film in 66, Georgie Girl. And so my mom told a great story about that song. Every time that I would play it, and I played it a lot, she says, Georgie Girl, your father took me to see that movie in 1966. It was like one of the only movies he ever took me to see. I was like, okay, I'll take that. And which I told my dad years later that story, and he just laughed at that because he could never figure out, I guess, which was the right movie to take my mom to see. But they went and saw Georgie Girl, so she always remembered that. And every time I played that on the album, she would always point that out. Thanks, Mom. That was much appreciated. The song that I love on this album is another cover. A lot of these songs were cover versions, but a big hit in 67 when this came out. This album, by the way, came out in May of 67. The new vaudeville band, Winchester Cathedral, famous song, and with the Rudy Valley sort of sound to it. And this song is funny because it's only 2 minutes long, but and you only run through if you listen to the lyrics, you listen to the whole thing, and they only go through it twice, and then they call it a day. That's it. But this was hilarious. I actually reached out on a Facebook group to find out who did the vocals for this. It was the drummer, Frank DeVito, did the lyrics in the studio. Here they are.
Winchester Cathedral, you're bringing me down. You stood and you watched as my baby left town. way. If only you started ringing your bell.
What a great song. It's just such a novelty song, but, you know, fun nevertheless. A huge hit for the New Vaudeville Band. They won a Grammy for it. It's like, what? That won a... Apparently so. So, who knows? Another big song on this album that was based from a movie, and it was a big song also, was another cover version, Born Free. And that song, that was originally by Matt Monro. Matt Monro was the guy who sang the theme song from Russia with Love. But he wasn't the one that had a hit with it. It was Roger Williams that went to number 7 with that. You'll notice in that song also, very characteristic of the Baja Marimba Band, that the melody is played on marimba and doubled with a flute. So it's very consistent the way they did that through the length of the span of their career. We're going to move on now to... Oh, the funny thing, before we move on, let me tell you a real quick story about Born Free. Every time I hear this song, all I can think of is I go back to about, I don't know, 2nd or 3rd grade in elementary school in music class. And the teacher had... there were songs we had to sing, and so she had these lyrics, and it hung up. It was like they were like 8 feet long. One of the songs that we sang was Born Free. I will not bore you with the vocal version of it myself, but you can just imagine how 30 second and third graders sounded when they're trying to belt out Born Free. So good luck with that. Another song on here that I really like is called Baja Nova. And let's take a listen to this because it's interesting that it resurfaces later on the A&M catalog. Again with that marimba and flute doubling on the melody. Nice little song. And I did not know this until I was going through and listening to some of the later Herb Alpert records. It got redone and it got retitled. Julius Wechter wrote it, but he also wrote the revised version, which was called Warm on Herb Alpert's album called Warm. Here's a little bit of it and you'll hear the melody. So that's a interesting regurgitation of the song. It's like they had a song, they liked it. Hey, you know what? Let's re-record it. We'll change the arrangement a little bit, and we'll put it out as a different title. One more song we'll talk about on the Heads Up album, Baja Marimba. They did a cover version of a song called Temptation. This came from 1933. It was sung by Bing Crosby in a movie called Going Hollywood. And you know, as you're a kid, you realize it's like, wow, they did a cover version of something way back in the 30s. All right, well, this album came out in 67. So the 30s was, well, do the math, like 30, 35 years ago, right? That would be like today if somebody did a song and they reached way back into about 1989 or 1990, and all of a sudden you're thinking, hey, wait a minute, that wasn't that long ago. But it was. So here you go. This is Temptation by the Baja Marimba Band. And this has just have like something like an exotic sound to it. Like this is something out of Egypt or Asia or something. It just has that sound, which is really cool. And I mentioned this was a cover version from 1933. This has a, you know what? Just listening to this now, has a bolero kind of sound to it. It's an interesting rhythm that they have. It just sounds like the bolero. So, you know, here's a song, 1933, almost 100 years old now. It's like 90 some odd, and covered in the 60s. You know, what's old is new again. They'll come around and redo all of this. So this is, that is Heads Up by the Baja Marimba Band. It's out there. You can find it on Discogs or eBay. I suggest picking up. Unfortunately, it's never been put out on CD. And really unfortunately, when A&M Records was sold, they were sold to Polygram, and then eventually came under Universal Music. And in 2007, 2008, Universal had a fire, and a lot of their music archives burned. And one of the artists listed among the hundreds of artists that they had tapes of, the Baja Marimba Band was listed. So you wonder, and they've never really said to the extent of what was lost, but you wonder if like all these master tapes, are they gone? Was it session tapes? Was it masters? Are there any protection copies out there anywhere? It's just never really been released on CD, and you just have to wonder if all of that stuff went up in smoke, which if it did, it would be a terrible shame, because this music should be preserved. Some of this stuff is timeless, and it's not just the Baja Marimba Band or Herb Alpert. Like, there's a lot of timeless music out there that needs to be preserved. So I guess time will tell. But anyway, there you go. Heads Up by the Baja Marimba Band. We'll see you next time on Gary's Record Collection.